Alright, the Bucks. It is Talking Buccaneers with me, Fumane, and yeah, something that has been a bit of a dreaded thought, something that I've sort of been thinking about, but maybe avoiding to speak about, but definitely thinking about, I think is upon us by my estimation. And yeah, what that is obviously we all saw that in the MTN 8 Cup final, Thalente Mbatha had to hop off the field. It seemed like he was injured. It then obviously got confirmed by the fact that he was dropped from the national team setup. Hugo Broos did announce that he's not going to be taking part in the qualifiers because he is injured, and that sort of prompted the thoughts that I've been having to maybe come on here and maybe share a few thoughts around what I think around that and what it looks like for Pirates going forward. So as I was saying, that for me the thought has been that I wonder what Pirates is going to look like without Thalente Mbatha, because one thing I think we can all fairly agree upon, something I feel like if we're all fair we can admit, is that his importance for Orlando Pirates has risen. He's become such a key figure in the midfield of Orlando Pirates, and even if we don't want to admit that, it seems like the head coach thinks that by way of selection anyway. He's starting almost every game for Orlando Pirates. Every big game he's what you might say is the first name on that team sheet. We've seen that if there must be a rotation in the middle of the park, it's usually between Dlamini and Makheleni, more than it will be Thalente Mbatha. He's become something of an untouchable in the Orlando Pirates 11, somewhat like Patrick Maswanganyi. Those are the names that you think that everyone can be rotated, but for sure Sipho Shane is playing, for sure Dion Hotto is gonna play, but you also know for sure Thalente Mbatha is gonna play alongside Tito Maswanganyi as well. And yeah, so what I want to sort of talk about is that something that's a bit of a worry, and I'll get to, I'm sure you've read the title, this is going to be an episode about Rasebotja, but I just sort of want to build my case before I get there, in saying that the worry with obviously losing Thalente Mbatha is that he's one of a kind. I think we don't have a midfielder like him at Orlando Pirates. The beauty of what we have in the club is that we've got a very varied midfield. We've got very different kind of midfielders playing for us. But I think a lot of them are quite replaceable by way of what they offer to the team. But I think what's unique about Thalente Mbatha is that there's no one like him at Orlando Pirates, and he's obviously someone who can play for us at 6. I've heard some people say that he plays at 8, but I definitely think he plays for Pirates at 6. By formation anyway, Pirates do line up in a 4-2-3-1. So those two positions in the middle of the park, which are your 2 6s, he plays as one of them. And maybe there's an argument out there to say that in some matches he plays as a single pivot. But I think a lot of the time what you see is that he's playing as a double pivot alongside someone. That someone is usually Dlamini or Makheleni. The uniqueness of Thalente Mbatha is that, as much as he's got the side of his game where, what you want from someone who's playing deep in that position to be able to protect the defense, but he's also got a lot of, attributes and qualities which are a bit uncharacteristic, especially when you think about the way that he's built. He's someone who's tall, but then he's got a bit of like nifty footwork. He can manipulate the ball really well, which then makes him someone who can avoid challenges. When Pirates is being pressed, He's someone who can get away from a challenge. And then after getting away from a challenge, he's someone who can eat a couple of yards with the ball, sort of travel with it. Now, I want to give a bit of an example of what I'm talking about, but I fear that people are going to think I'm saying he plays just like, and that's not what I mean altogether. But what I'm talking about is what you will have seen with someone like Yaya Toure, is he's someone who would be able to get away from people, and Thalente Mbatha and Yaya Toure do it in different ways, don't get me wrong, but what you would get from Toure is that he would then be able to eat a couple of yards with the ball, because that gets the team to progress. And I'll get to how that contrasts with all our other midfielders, because I don't think we have someone who does that for us quite like Thalente Mbatha. So he can travel with the ball, he can get away from a challenge because he's got really, really nifty footwork. He can manipulate the ball really well. As challenges sort of come towards him very deep in Orlando Pirates' build-up phase, he can get away from people. He can dribble past them. And then after doing that, he sort of just travels with the ball and he gets the team on the front foot. Now, I mean, obviously, there's also the side of his game that I think I already mentioned, that he's got a bit of a defensive side to him, where you always see him trying to win the ball back for us. And maybe if I were to point out a bit of a lacking in his game, I really don't think it's a lacking, but definitely if you contrast him with someone like Dlamini, you wouldn't say that Thalente Mbatha is a great passer. He's someone obviously who keeps the ball in rotation very well. I think he's got a very good vision, but vision is always great when it's met with great execution as well. So you want to be able to execute the things that you see, and I wouldn't put Thalente Mbatha high up there in terms of, he's got a very good pass, but I do think that he sees a lot in his mind. He's able to see, and read the game and sort of dictate play for Orlando Pirates. Now, the contrast with that is that, we obviously saw that when, Thalente went off, someone who came on was, I beg your pardon, Rasebotja. And I think what I want to talk about with Rasebotja is obviously, as you will have seen from the title, is that is he ready, to come on and be somewhat of a Thalente Mbatha replacement. Now, I know obviously most people are thinking that he doesn't need to be, because we can always start with Dlamini and Dlamini, who seem like they are ahead of Rasebotja in the pecking order. But I do think that obviously you want to have three options. You want to be able to change games. You want to be able to bring someone on. You want to be able to rest someone. Say, for example, you're playing sort of 3 games in a short span, and you want to rest someone. So you want to have that option to say, okay, if we are without Thalente Mbatha, we've got maybe our starters in Dlamini and Mbatha, but who's that third option who can allow us to be able to rotate? And obviously Rasebotja then has to be that person. It seems like he's that person, because obviously on the team sheet, he's ahead of Tim at the moment, he's ahead of Ndawaiteto Ndlondlo and Goodman Musele, who play in that position. Now, my thing with the contrast of Rasebotja and Thalente Mbatha is that, and I think what we're getting with Rasebotja, and I've been trying to learn about him a little bit more. I definitely watched him in the preseason. I can admit I didn't see a lot of him at SuperSport United and before that. So my sort of exposure to him, especially in the way of kind of analyzing his game, is I've had to see him in the preseason and got a good sort of view of what he brings to the team in the final, in his short cameo. And my summation of Rasebotja is that I think he comes in at Orlando Pirates more as a like-for-like replacement for Dlamini than he is for Thalente Mbatha. And I can justify that, because I kind of already see some disagreements with what I'm saying. But I think, Rasebotja, just like Thalente Mbatha is, Rasebotja just like Dlamini, he's someone who, especially if you think about Thalente Mbatha, who I said that, my view of him is that he travels with the ball, he breaks the lines of the opposition by getting away from them and that sort of thing. And when you think about Dlamini, and Rasebotja is quite like Dlamini in that regard, is that Dlamini is not someone who gets away from challenges by dribbling past people, but rather he's a good dictator of space. So how he affords himself, the ability to not lose the ball, unlike Thalente, who will dribble past people when there's pressure. Dlamini what he uses more is to be able to find, I'm sorry if you're hearing a loud noise, I am in a public space, so yeah, hopefully you can hear me. But Dlamini, how he kind of allows himself to not lose the ball is he finds these intelligent spaces, and I think Rasebotja is like Dlamini in that regard, is that you'll constantly see him availing himself, finding spaces to be able to receive without pressure, whereas Thalente, like I already said, is that he will receive under pressure and get away from these challenges. But Rasebotja is quite like Dlamini in that you keep seeing him finding pockets of spaces to avail himself to receive a pass, and then in receiving the pass, just like Dlamini, and unlike Thalente, is that where Thalente will travel with it at times, is that people like Dlamini and Rasebotja, they allow the ball to travel more than he will travel with it. So he'll sort of break lines by passing the ball rather than traveling with it. And I think he's like Dlamini in that regard. He's someone who's always looking to how can we get past a line of pressure. But his way of doing that, again, unlike Thalente, is that he's going to try and slide these passes through these lines of pressure. He's going to try and find his teammates behind the opposition, and I think in that regard he reminds me he reminds me of Kabelo Dlamini in that regard, is that he wants to distribute the play. He wants to find people. He seems like he's got a great vision. I think time will tell whether or not his passing is great. Saw one or two misplaced passes in the final. Definitely one way he was trying to switch play. Even one way he was trying to thread, the play through lines, and that got intercepted. Now, again, this is not me saying his passing is bad or whatever. I'm just going to allow myself to see it unfold over time. But one thing I can see is that he's got the vision. Whether he's wise with possession, because one of the other things you want with your midfielder is that you don't want your midfielder to be irresponsible with possession, especially in the middle of the pitch, is that you don't want to be turning over possession by trying impossible passes. And I think we can agree that that's one of the things that is sort of off-putting about Ndlondlo, who on his day Ndlondlo is amazing, but he does seem like sometimes he kind of loses his head and makes a difficult pass where there's no need to, or maybe it's a thing of execution. Maybe the pass was possible, but his execution isn't great, and so maybe that's a bit of my fear in wanting to watch Rasebotja some more, is that is he someone who's going to pull off those passes? Because as much as you want your Dlamini to be threading passes and taking these risky passes, obviously he's going to turn over a few. But you want someone who's trying those passes to be able to pull them off, because the alternative means that the opposition win the ball back in the middle of the pitch and they get to attack us while we're vulnerable. And yeah, so in that regard, obviously, sort of getting back to what I was saying, is that I think Rasebotja is a bit like Kabelo Dlamini, and for me, I think he comes to Orlando Pirates as more of a Kabelo Dlamini replacement. Now, whether or not he's ready is, I think, my kind of feel for it in the final, especially in a case where he has to replace a Thalente Mbatha, is that I think he's more of a person I can maybe trust playing alongside Makala, because again, that sort of varies the play. And what I love again about the Pirates midfield is that there's such a variance of our midfield when you're playing someone like Mbatha and Dlamini, is that you've got someone who can, if we're unable to thread passes, you can trust Thalente to drive past people, but then you've also got someone who can, you know, pass through lines in Dlamini, and you know, Dlamini's been doing very well also in his sort of defensive part, especially in being in positions where he can help us, you know, close gaps in midfield when we are being counter-attacked, or when the opposition is in possession, trying to maybe, you know, pass around us and get through us. You know, Dlamini seems like he's someone who's in a good position, but I think Thalente playing alongside him is a bit of an assurance, because Thalente will be there and he's going to be covering, he's going to be trying to win the ball back, and I love that variance. But I think what I'm not sure about so far, especially with regards to Rasebotja, is that does he have that side of the game, but also does he vary the play, or are we going to be too predictable with Dlamini and Rasebotja playing the same way? But then obviously, like I said, you know, I can trust him a bit more with Makehleni, because Makehleni is going to give you a bit of that protection again. He's someone who is a ball winner in that midfield. He's someone who tries to make those recovery runs and win the ball back for us. He's someone who goes to the air and competes for challenges and that sort of thing, which is a side of the game that you obviously want. But also quite reminiscent of, you know, Thabang Monare. I think Makehleni is someone who keeps the possession ticking rather than try to, you know, create an attack. He's someone who kind of keeps us circulating the ball when we're trying to find alternatives to attack the opposition. And obviously there's a variance with Makehleni and Rasebotja in that there's going to be a sort of different way of trying to attack the opposition. Makehleni does it in one way, and Rasebotja is going to be more adventurous in his passing and try to get us behind the opposition. And I can trust them playing together some more, but I think I'm not sure if he's ready to play alongside Dlamini, and I think it's because they're very similar, and I'm yet to see sort of his defensive nous, his you know, ability to cover us and make us not too vulnerable for these attacks. But yeah, that's what I'm thinking. And one of the things I sort of want to clear is that you know, I'm coming with these questions, and for me this is sort of like, let's think through this, because I think one of the misconceptions is that maybe some people think that I think I've got the answer, and I don't. I have the questions just like maybe a lot of people, and let me be humble, maybe you guys have got the answers, but for me it's more of a question, and it's more of a thing. I'm sort of bringing this up so that we can think about it rather than here's what I think the answer is. But yeah, let me leave it there. What do you guys think? Do you think Rasebotja were covered in the absence of Thalente Mbatha? Up the mighty Bucks. Cheers. Well, I hope you enjoyed that video from Talking Buccaneers. If you did, please hit that subscribe button so you can stay up to date with all our future content.